These are the forks I'm going to use. They're Yamaha PW80. Used them quite a few times in the past and had good luck. These were a pretty decent straight set. These were pretty rough, but I didn't really buy this set for the forks. I bought that set because it had this, which is a Pro Taper aluminum upper triple tree, which is a really nice piece. It's obviously in kind of rough condition, but I can clean that up. And that actually replaces this part, which is pretty thin and flimsy. This one's all bent up. When I use the stock one, I'll make a plate that'll fit inside this nice and tight and then weld it in. And I've had good luck with that. But with this, I don't have to do any of that. It's plenty strong as it is. So I get all this stuff taken apart and cleaned up and start going through a process of what I do to make them work. Start disassembling these forks, taking these boots off. These are pretty trash, they're all weather checked. So there's a Allen bolt in the bottom of these forks. It's a 6mm. This is the bolt that comes out of the bottom. It's got a copper crush washer to seal it. So yeah, just once the bolt's out, it'll just slide off. So on the top of these is another Allen plug. I believe it's 8mm. Yeah, 6 doesn't fit. So that plug is under spring pressure. So you have to be very careful when you remove it. It's not a lot of pressure, but just be aware. Very little pressure. Just a very thin nut almost, or I don't know what you want to call it. So then once that plate is out, there's a spring. The dampener rod, and then the top out spring. And that's it. That's all that's inside of these forks. Starting the fork leg modification process. First thing I'm going to do is remove the fork seals. Above those are some retaining clips. Just use a little screwdriver and pop those out. There's a little bit of rust accumulation in there, so I sprayed some PB Blaster on top of the seals and just let it sit for a couple minutes to help to loosen up those seals. So then, to remove the seals, I just clamp a pry bar into my vise, and then just gently get underneath the seal. Usually got to work your way around. Biggest thing is to be careful to not dig into the side of the fork leg. Just grab just enough of the seal. So after pulling the seals out, flush the legs out good with brake cleaner. This is a brake cleaner I use. I really like it. It doesn't attack painted surfaces. I think it's just basically alcohol. It's like a propellant. It doesn't have the acetone that some of the other brake cleaners have. So you can just spray it on painted surfaces and it doesn't hurt them at all. Works good for removing adhesive, residue, stuff like that. So after removing the seals, I went through with some wire brushes and some Scotch-Brite and cleaned out the rust and corrosion that was accumulated in the top of these legs. The next step from here is to remove this tab that I don't need, and then the brake stay that I won't be using. The other fork leg doesn't require anything like that. So then to finish this, I'll hit this with a grinder with a flap wheel, blend this all in a lot better. So here I have those extra tabs cut off, blended in as good as they need to be. So now my next step will be to drill out the axle holes. These are 10 millimeter as they come. I'm going up to 15 millimeter. I feel like that still leaves plenty of material here, and honestly I've been running this setup for probably 4 or 5 years without any issues. So, but it does make it adaptable for pretty much anything you need. Is starting at 10 millimeters, you know, 10, 12, or 15 millimeter axle, or probably even go up to 5/8 because it's just slightly bigger than 15 millimeter. So it's really a matter of personal preference as to how you drill this. I have a drill press, but I feel like I don't have a lot of control with the drill press, so I'd rather drill this out by hand rather than have it catch on the drill bit and something catastrophic happen with the drill press. So that being said, I use a step drill because I think they help you stay straighter with the existing hole as you're drilling, because you kind of monitor your drill engagement each step, if that makes any sense. So I'll start with the one that goes up to 1/2 inch. Again, I believe this is 10 millimeter to begin with. So once I hit the 1/2 inch step, I'll flip it and then come from the other side. Once again, I believe that helps to keep everything straight with the existing hole. So that's at 1/2 inch. There you can see the existing wear mark from the original axle. I'm pretty concentric with that hole. So then after going up to 1/2 inch with a step drill, I'm going to run through just a straight drill bit just to help straighten everything out. So then, after running that 1/2 inch drill bit in from both sides, make sure the hole's all straight. I'll put the bigger step drill in, and here I have it marked. That mark is at 5/8, so I'm not going to let it drill 5/8. I'll go 9/16, because that's just below 15 millimeters. I'm actually using the 5/8 to bevel the edge a little bit. And after the 9/16 step drill comes the 15 millimeter. It's not exactly precise, but it doesn't really need to be. It's definitely good enough for mini bikes. All the parts for the forks are all cleaned up. Coat of paint on the fork legs. New fork seals for these PW80 Forks from Parts Unlimited. There's your part number. So I'll start by putting the fork seals into the lower legs using Bel-Ray 15 weight oil. Use some fork oil to lube the insides and the outsides of the seals. The seal seated in all the way past the snap ring groove. Go ahead and put the snap ring in. So, fork tubes. This is normally how it would be assembled. You would have this is the top out spring on the damper tube, and this would be slid inside to your fork tube. So imagine this bottomed out your fork tube. And then this is your main spring, and that sits on top of that. So as your suspension works, you'll just imagine this tube. This is how everything's moving in there. So what I change is I actually add another top out spring, and that'll actually shorten the travel. But I find that with the way my bikes are set up, you don't need that much travel. You just need something to take out the small bumps and imperfections. So by adding the top out spring, it's lowering the fork about an inch, and it's adding about an inch of preload to the main spring. So that will give me a shorter, stiffer fork. So even that probably isn't really enough, being how small the spring is. So then I use a Barnett clutch spring for a Harley Davidson Scorpion clutch. And that'll go on the outside, on the bottom here. So go ahead and install this. So that'll give me, with this on here, that'll still give me about a ½ inch travel on the main spring before it hits this spring. So it's like a dual rate. So it'll give you a little softer spring, but then when you really start pushing it, it'll resist bottoming out. But here you can see how much the spring is sticking out now. So there'll be that much preload on the main spring. but I'll use that to pull tension on the dampener rod and assemble the lower fork leg onto it. Just screwing that in to make sure I'm lined up in the bottom. Put pipe thread sealer at the bottom of the screw against the washer just to help with sealing at the bottom of the fork. It's probably not necessary, but better be safe. So then to tighten that down, I just use a 3/8 electric impact. Doesn't need to be crazy tight. Four ounces, 15 weight, Bell Ray fork oil. Dump about half of it in first. And pump it a few times to bleed the air. Spring in. Then the spring cap. It's an 8mm hex. And be very careful to not cross thread this. This doesn't get torqued down against anything, it just runs out of threads. You'll hear it pop when it starts skipping the threads. There. Then be very careful to keep it upright until you have it installed, because it's still open on the top and you lose oil out. So this will clean up and probably paint it black. Alright, at this point I've got the bearing races installed in the frame. This is the lower race. The upper bearing race. The upper bearing, packed it with grease, just some decent quality wheel bearing grease. This is the lower triple tree, cleaned up and put a coat of black paint on it. I used the original lower seal, not the one that comes with the bearings, because it doesn't really fit in the frame right where it does much of anything. It's actually too small, so it doesn't really seal. And then that's the lower bearing I packed with grease and then press it onto the stem. I just used a piece of tubing that fit over and match up to the inner race of the bearing. Just kind of lightly tap that on. This is the upper dust shield and then the crown nut. Just taking some bearing grease, putting a coat on the race. Just gonna snug this down. I'm not getting crazy tight with it, but being all new stuff, I'd go a little tighter than what you normally would. And you also have to take account in that when you put the top tree on and then tighten that bolt, it'll push down on this crown nut and actually takes up the little bit of slack that's in the threads, and that'll make it tighter. This is that Pro Taper upper triple tree that all cleaned up. It's got some scratches on it and stuff, but it's good enough for a mini bike. A little bit of blue Loctite on this bolt. Use these fork seal covers for neoprene boots that slide over the fork legs.